Hi everybody, my name's Clayton and I'm from Australia, and right now I'm actually in one of my most favourite places in Australia, a place where I used to love to come camping when I was probably a bit younger than you. And I've just noticed next to me there's a lizard on the rock, so I'm going to see whether I can get this picture of a lizard for you. I'm going to get really close. Oh, he's running away. I think he's more scared of me than I am of him. Hello, mate. Oh, looks like he's gone. Well, you know what? By tomorrow, I'm going to actually be with you all. I can't be there now, and I'm really sad that I can't be there now. But I thought you might like to see a bit of this country where I come from. But, you know, I haven't been here for about 20 years. I used to come here when I was a tiny baby. In fact, my sisters, they can tell me about when I was a baby. Once they said I was sitting in a clothes basket, which was inside a rubber tire, which was floating on this little creek, this little river behind me, and it was tied to a tree. And one of my sisters told me a few days ago, she said, you know, I remember when a snake swam past you in that little basket. I don't know if that's true or not, but she thought it was. But isn't this a beautiful place? Look at this. This is where I would spend a lot of my childhood, and we'd swim in this river, and I got lots of really good memories of this place. And you know, it wasn't long after we used to come here that my family moved to Japan, where you are, and I actually spent a few years of my life when I was probably about your age, maybe a little bit younger, growing up in Japan. So, you know, I come here and this is part of my story. This place is part of where I grew up, and it's kind of like, this is part of my story. And part of my story also is going to Japan and living there. And I lived in Tokyo. I lived in Denenchofu. And I went to school on the train, and I came home from school on the train, and I remember when it snowed sometimes. I've got lots of great memories of Japan. And this place where I am now, and my time in Japan, and other countries that I lived in when I was growing up, because my father, because of the work he did, we've moved around to different countries. And all of those places that I lived make up my story. And it's just like you know, you have your own story. I'm not sure if you were born in Japan or you were born in another country. I'm not sure why you are in Japan now, but you are. And you know what? You're getting memories just like I got memories by the things you do. And this camp this week is actually going to be great memories for you too. But you know, that's your story. I've got my story and you've got your story. And I want us to talk a little bit about our stories tomorrow when I'm with you. And I want us to think about how our stories are part of God's big story. Now, some of you have got your Bibles with you this week. And you know, do you know what a Bible is? It's actually a story. It's actually God's story. It's the story of God, and I often think of God like a king. So it's the story of the king and his world, or I often call it his kingdom, the story of the king and his kingdom. And it's a story that we're actually part of, you know. And I want to show you, because I want to show you something. When you read the Bible, it's a lot of words, isn't it? I don't know if you've ever read it from the front cover to the back cover, but boy, if you did, that would be a lot of reading to do. But, you know, we're used to the Bible as a lot of words. But I want to try and help you think about the Bible in a different way for a minute. And I'm here, what I've done is I've got this big log. I hope I can get far enough back for you to see it. There's a big log there. And I want you to imagine that this rock that I've put here, imagine that's the part of the Bible where God creates everything. He created the universe, he created the world, he created animals, fish, and he created people. And in the Bible, in the part of the Bible at the very beginning called Genesis, we read about God creating everything, including people. So there is a rock And I want you to imagine that that's about the story of God creating the whole universe and everything in it. That's the beginning. But you know, the story, you know, if you can imagine that you can get down here at this end of the story. Let me see if I can get the rock. Here's the rock. And you know, as you look up, you can see that this story goes along through history. It goes along and it goes along. And I'm going to get another rock. I hope this makes sense to you. And I want this rock, I'm going to put this rock right here. So there's the creation. And this rock, I'm going to say that represents the new creation. That's something that's going to happen in the future. And we read about the new creation, this part of this story, this big story of God, in another part of the Bible called Revelation. Actually, we read about it in a few places, really. But Revelation's probably the main place we read it. So here we have a story. You can see there is creation, and then there's all these things that happen until we get up here to sometime in the future, and that represents new creation. And you know, in the middle of this story, something really special happened. And so I've made, if you like this, I've made this cross, and I actually had to get a bit of a branch to tie it together like rope. But here's my cross, and I'm going to put my cross in the middle of this log to represent Jesus and him being born, if I can get it to stay upright. Stay there. Yeah, there we go. So here's the cross, okay? And we've got creation down here, and then there was a whole lot of things that happened, and then we got to the cross. And there's a whole story about the cross, about Jesus. And you know some of that because it's got to do with Christmas, and it's got to do with Easter, and it's got to do with a whole lot of amazing things that Jesus did. Jesus is a very special person in this story. And then right up the other end, up here, is something that's happening in the future, and that's what we often call the new creation. That's creation. That is new creation. Now, another part of this story that's really important, I've found some berries on a tree. I'll see if I can show them to you. These are called blackberries. They don't look very black because they're not ripe, but when they're ripe they go black. You know, part of the story of the Bible is about some fruit just like that. See, God had created these people, Adam and Eve, and they lived in this wonderful garden, but God said, you know what, Adam and Eve, there's one thing, I want you to love this garden, I want you to have a lot of fun in this beautiful place that I've created, but I don't want you to do one thing, don't want you to eat of a tree, because that's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now that might be hard to understand, but you know what, they did eat the fruit. They ate, it might have been blackberries, who knows, we don't know what kind of fruit it was, but Adam and Eve did what God didn't want them to do. And you know what? Everything from that point on, it's kind of like it became broken. The world became broken. The world which was fantastic and good became broken. And there's a whole lot of story. Lots of people who lived all the way through here. And just like you and I have a story, they have a story too. And we read their stories in the Bible. We read about lots of different people in the Bible and their stories. And you know, we get to the point where Jesus came and he lived and he died on a cross just like this one. And he rose again. And that's a very important thing that happened. And that's something I'm going to talk a little bit about when I'm with you, just to try and help you understand why that's so important. So I'm really just giving you a few clues here, okay? And maybe this is confusing, maybe it's not. And hopefully tomorrow when I'm with you we can make a bit more sense of it. But there's a couple other things I want to say to you about this story. Okay, here I am at New Creation. This is the New Creation story. Looking down and we can see the cross, we can see the eating of the fruit and Adam and Eve, and we can see when God created everything in this story. And lots of people, there was lots of people all along this story. But one of the most amazing things I want to say is that this story here, this rock, represents us. We are part of the story. And there's lots of us. So this pile of rocks here, that represents you, the person sitting next to you, person sitting opposite you, me, and everybody in the world. We are part of this great big story. Hope you can see that. Can you see? Creation, new creation, the cross, and us. We are part of the story. Our names aren't written in the Bible, but the Bible is about this big story of God right through history, and we're part of that big story. And the new creation is going to happen sometime in the future. We're going to talk a little bit about that. So that's my little bit of an introduction. Because I can't be with you today, I wanted to do something on video just to give you a bit of introduction for you to look at. And that's my little bit of introduction. We'll talk more tomorrow. Now, you're going to get together with your coaches today too. And what I'd like you to do with your coaches, I'd like you to talk about your story. I'd like you to talk about how you got to be at this camp, where you came from. Did you come from another country? Who's part of your family? Have you got any pets? What are some of your best memories? What are some of the best things that you can remember? And maybe you might even want to talk about some things that were maybe sad things that have happened to you, or not so nice things. You don't have to talk about those things, but when you talk about your story with your coaches and in your group, that might be something you want to talk about too. But in the meantime, I'm just going to go and enjoy looking at this beautiful environment that I'm in here. And in a few days' time, I'm going to jump on an aeroplane and I'm going to fly to Narita. And I'm going to come over to where you guys are, and I'm going to get there by tomorrow. Okay? So I'll see you then. Have a great time now with your coaches. And I hope that some of those things I talked about just help you to sort of think about the Bible in perhaps a little bit of a different way than you've thought about it before. And we'll talk more about it tomorrow. Okay, see you soon, everyone. I'm on a bit of a ledge just here. I'm just above the water and I'm walking around this rock. So hopefully I won't meet any snakes or anything bad on my way home. But we've got lots of things in Australia. Do you know, we've got more things that can kill you in Australia than anywhere else in the world? Well, I'll leave that thought with you, and hopefully I'll get home and over to you in Japan. See you. Hey, I'm just walking home through the bush and I came across these. Do you know what they are? Let's see if I can get a good shot. They're burrows. They're burrows for an Australian animal that we call a wombat. A wombat's it's kind of like a little tiny bear that walks along the ground. They can be quite friendly, but they've got very sharp claws. And I can see there's some fresh tracks here in this one. So I suspect there's a wombat down one of those holes. In fact, those holes probably join up together underneath. Don't you just love animals sometimes and where they live? There's lots of great things to see around here. Anyway, oh yeah, and remember, this is all part of my story, and my story is part of God's big story, just like yours is. Man, I'm looking forward to catching up with you guys.